Welcome to Step 10 of the Clarity tutorial. In this segment, we'll go over managing when an uncontacted lead shows up in your Today tab. Your Today tab displays all leads that need to be called at some point during the current day, and will help you develop rules about how this happens based on your best practices. This section gives you the opportunity to optimize your workflow. Let's get started. Go to clarity-crm.com. Enter your login information, and let's go to the home page. Select the Home tab on the left side of your screen. Under the Home tab, there's a Manage menu item at the top. Expand the Manage tab by selecting it, and then click on Optimized Workflow. Here is the Manage Workflow screen. This is where rules are set for how you and your team will call on leads that have not been contacted yet. As a side note, once they are contacted, they fall out of this set of rules. That's when requiring a calendar event comes in handy. Let's get back to the workflow topic. Clarity has the Today tab open when you log in. The Today tab has clients that you have scheduled follow-up calls for, as well as new leads coming in and leads you are still trying to make first contact with. Let me tie the Today tab together with optimizing your workflow. If you have an existing client that you are talking to, it's easy to schedule a call for them in the future, and it will show up in your Today tab. But if you have clients that you or your team have not contacted yet, sometimes they get lost in the shuffle or don't get a sufficient enough effort to make first contact with. This is a lost opportunity. Clarity gives you the ability to establish rules that say, call new prospects every 3 hours on day 1 and every 4 hours on day 2. Perhaps you give them a break for a couple of days and say, try the call again on day 5 and again on day 10. In other words, if there's a new lead or leads that you and your team have not contacted yet, you can establish a preference for how often these leads get called. These rules for this schedule are set up in this section, and when those rules have been triggered, the lead will go to your Today tab. Let's take a look at how this works inside Clarity. Start by clicking Add Practice. This is the input window where we'll set these rules up for how your workflow operates. At the top, you need to decide on a name for this rule. In most cases, you'll only do one set of rules for all your lead sources. I'll name this one Master Workflow. Below the practice name is an area that allows you to set up a beginning and ending time for this rule. Let's say you want to control uncontacted leads that come in between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day. Make that setting here. It will reset and display the new workflow findings at midnight, but in this case, it won't look until 8 a.m. Below that is where we define how many times in a day a lead might be called. In your initial screen, you will only have one day open. Let's add 3 more days for this example by clicking the Add Day button. When you're setting up your workflow, you can add as many days as you want. In the timeline, you define a time separated by the day the lead was initially added to the system. Let's call them day number 1, 2, 5, and 10, like our previous example. Now let's say on day 1, there will be 3 hours between contact attempts. On day 2, there will be 4 hours between contact attempts. On day 5 and 10, there will be a minimum of 8 hours between attempts. Let me see if I can clear this up just a little bit more. Day 1 is the first day the lead was introduced into the Clarity CRM. The day of the week has no significance here. If the lead came in at 8:01 a.m. on day 1, it could get called 3 or 4 times that day, or every 3 hours based on how we set these rules up. If the lead came in at 5 p.m. on day 1, it would only get called once that day. Why is that, you say? Our rules we set in place end our day at 6 p.m. So after the initial lead comes in at 5 p.m., the 3-hour window would not come up again until the next day. In other words, the lead gets called on day 1 every 3 hours from when it first came in. On day 2, based on a rule set, it could get called up to 3 times, depending on when you make that first call, unless we make contact with that lead. Remember my side note at the beginning? The lead will leave this rule set once contact is made. Okay, let's save this rule set and click Close. Here is our workflow practice we just created. You can delete or edit this practice here. If you have multiple lead sources, you can apply a practice specifically for that lead source by adding it here. For example, you may want self-generated leads to be less aggressively pursued, so you add one practice for self-generated leads. You may also have leads that you're paying for that are pre-screened and ready for your service or product, and on those leads, you may want a more aggressive calling schedule. So you would set up rules to promote that retail lead source. The optimized workflow system is here to help you and your team be more productive. Well, that's it for now. As always, please feel free to contact support with additional questions And thank you for building your network with Clarity.